Hello, and welcome back to the next episode of Speak. Um, so we've an interesting one today. We are going to have a chat about um actually I don't even know how you're going to come up with you come up with the titles, so I don't know how you're going to come up with a title for this one. But
Yeah, well, I suppose it's just
might emerge.
it's a pod about a post.
What about a post?
Yeah.
Done. Fuck, you're with this. Right. Okay, so there was this post on LinkedIn, and I'm going to read it out and then we're going to have a chat about it. So it was in a kind of a comment thread that you were on. And so this comment was posted by Christian Harris, fellow podcasting bro, safety professional. And yeah, it kind of piqued the interest. So this is what Christian's comment said was playing the long game is how we should all act, but in the corporate world, it isn't set up to achieve it. I remember speaking to another person on her podcast about this as it relates to how we remunerate and incentivize health and safety performance. If you are the CEO of a public company, all you really care about in terms of your remuneration, that word is hard to say, at the end of the day is share price. And the odds are you will be there for maybe 5 years, but not 25. Investing in a long-term safety plan is not really in your own personal direct interest, annoyingly. Whereas in a privately held company where the horizons are much longer, it's easier for the MD to buy into the delayed gratification of investing into health and safety. If she can see the benefits of something in 15 years' time, then that's worth investing into now. And that's where he then tags you into the conversation. Crystal may be able to tell me I'm speaking rubbish, as she's got experience working in these types of very big businesses. So, Crystal.
So
is Christian speaking rubbish, Crystal?
It's really, so I responded to the post basically saying I really do disagree with pretty much every point in it, and I love that. I think he knows that I would have, which is why he brought me in. He likes that sort of rounded conversation. And then when I said to you about doing an episode, even just reading that comment, your point. What was your thought on it?
Well, like you were like, I disagree with everything Christian said, and I was like, I agree with pretty much every fucking word of what he just said.
Which is why it was like, this is a great topic to cover. And I guess there is so much to dig into here. And I don't know whether I'm really interested from your perception, because I know how amazing you are. I know how well read you are, and I know how experienced you are. And for your opinion to still be, I really agree with this. I'm like, where does that come from? And then I suppose what I do is I step back and say, okay, I haven't really ever worked for small organizations. I've only ever really worked at big ones, and particularly the last 10, I've only really been at the top of organizations. And so I suppose I'm a step closer to how it really sounds, feels, the conversations that happen in a boardroom around safety and investment, particularly in this case. And there are so many conversations where I've seen an MD make a really big call and take millions and millions out of the bottom line to do the right thing that will never pay back in their tenure. So as I go through it's not in their best interest. What isn't? Because a death is certainly not in the interest of any organization. So it's not in their best interest to invest. Don't agree, and have definitely seen contrary to that. That whole thing about there must be a return on investment because everyone does 5 years, definitely seen major CEOs be in place longer than 5 years. And then this whole thing about incentivizing health and safety in this post also got me like, incentivizing it's just so double-edged. So we can dig into any of those points, but I would really love to hear from your side, like, what does it, I had an allergic reaction in a good way. And again, this is Christian wanting, I think, the debate. But how does it feel then from your side? Like when you say you agree with everything, talk to me about that.
Well, I suppose, look, yeah, there's parts of it that they're definitely like generalizations. Like he says, the odds are you'll be there for maybe 5, but not 25.
Yep.
that's definitely a generalization. There's going to be people there who are longer than that, but
yeah, no, there's no CEO of a public limited company or whatever that's there like 20, quarter of a century given.
So, but I guess like, why would I agree with it? I guess a lot of it does come down to perception, and perception of, like, I have worked in very big, like, publicly listed companies, but when I did work in companies that size, I was so far down the pecking order that, like, I had no idea who these people at the board level were. I mean, I knew them as in from their headshots, but like that was the extent of it. And anything that, I think when you're in a company that size and you are that distant from the top, it's very hard to not get into that kind of eye rolly mindset of, like, literally any comms that come out, you're like, whatever, what the fuck would you know? Like, it's just like, oh, here's some more corporate shit, but we're down here we're doing the thing.
Yeah.
So that you get to be up there doing whatever it is that you do. Strategy. Like, okay, yeah, sure, cool. So, like, it just, there don't, like, I think it has to be an exceptional company.
Yeah.
That is publicly listed and doesn't have an us and them, not even publicly listed. I'm sure there's huge companies that are huge and not publicly listed, but that doesn't have that us and them mentality, or that disconnect.
Yeah.
It's that disconnect between what happens up at the board, what they say, like, even what you say, oh, what it sounds, what it feels like. I'm like, I would not know nor believe.
Yeah.
Like, so that, and then, versus working in a smaller company. And I guess the more senior my roles got, the smaller the companies became.
Right.
So I got closer to management. But it's like, when I talk about, presenting to a board, that's 3 people, and they're people that I deal with every day.
Yeah.
Day in, day out. It's not like going into a corporate. Could you imagine me going into a fucking corporate boardroom? I'm like, hiya, let's talk about safety. Like,
I 100% could, by the way, just to throw that out there. I think it would be incredible. And I think most boards would love and be completely refreshed by you. But go on.
But yeah, so I guess that's why my initial response to Christian's post would be, yeah, I get that feeling, I get that perception. Again, like I say, the distance from the everyday employee to somebody at a board level, it's hard to be, it's like, it's the disconnect dehumanizes. It's the same as, and we have this thing of, management dehumanize frontline workers. They fire that dehumanization straight back up the line.
Yeah, for sure.
It's very easy to demonize management, be like, those fuckers up there in their ivory tower, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think, you're taking me sort of back in my mind to my first ever job, where I was frontline, and there was definitely a separate building. And I said this on a million like webinars or conferences, a separate building for the management, and then the technicians were in next door, but not allowed, building 9, building 4 is what it was. And it was 100% eye rolly, but the eye rolly came from, you're 100% right, it's the disconnect, the fact that we didn't feel like we were respected as humans, because we were the dirty guys that sat in building 4, and they were the suited and booted clean guys that sat in building 9 writing the stuff, not talking to us. And I suppose one of the things that I'd said, I think, in my response to Christian was, I think a lot of this I find that this feeling, this us and them feeling, feels part of my passion for my roles. I really feel like if you've got a safety director in play in a large organization, the biggest role that they have is to bridge that gap, to humanize the frontline workers to the board, make the harm real. And I think some of that goes back to, we just did a podcast on measuring success. We talk about changing language, different types of KPI. You have to switch on, because I think from my point of view, they have an entire organization. Let's say they have 200,000 mortgages to pay. How do we keep the business floating so everybody gets to put their kids through school, feed everybody, blah, blah, blah. They get to keep everybody going. It's a big responsibility. And they get a million board reports and a million functions. They have to know all of it's working. And safety is just going to be another one in the pile, right? So it's hard to then be the one that stands out and says, oh, this one though, this one's got a heartbeat. All the others, plain text and numbers, but this one's got a heartbeat, and you need to understand that. I find it part of the safety leadership's role to inspire that, to trigger that, because it's not going to be automatic. It can't be, because boards have too many plates to keep spinning. It is your job to go into that room and bring that alive. And I have to say, I'm pretty good at bringing things alive, caring, sharing care, inspiring care. It's not easy for me because when you have a small slot and you're delivering a message, you have to really think about, what do I need to land today? Do I need something? Do I need a decision? Do I need them to care? And actually to impregnate that care into everything that you do is a tough gig. But I have to say, anytime that I've never gone into a room asking for investment, which is what that post was about. Yeah. When I've done my work, right, when I've really, really changed the language, brought the risk home, and I'm talking about people and numbers and risk in a proper way, and I've done the homework to do a full ROI, to say, here is your business problem, here is your business, this is what it's costing you in terms of people, money, time. Being unsafe is really inefficient, by the way, for your organization. And I love people and we don't want to hurt those. So we love the same thing. Can we just do something about it? And I guarantee the biggest wow moment I ever had was asking a board for a load of money to move assets that had never been moved in the history, like 40 years. We just planted them in the same way for 40 years. And I wanted to not only move everything that I had risk assessed in a different way to say it was high risk, but I also wanted to change all the processes in the organization that planted the plant and every contractor's methodology for planting the plant. It was mega millions. And I was prepared to be batted for moving everything to like, what's the really important stuff that we have to move right now? And I got a tier system. And I'd gone in and I didn't say anything about which tier I wanted. One of the hardest faces in that room said, well, this is a no-brainer. You've really explained it well. I understand the risk. I know why it's important. Yes, it's going to, I think it was like 7 million quid. And I'm assuming we're not just going to do the top bunch. We're going to do like the top and the middle bunch. I was like, and like you just, to anybody out there that's thinking, you just walk out going, yeah, great. Everything he's going, just play it cool. Yeah. Like, oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, just the top two there. Yeah. Top two. Yeah, that's what I was problem. That's what I was thinking. Brilliant. And you wander out and you go and you do something good. But I've seen that happen a lot. But I really think the interesting thing is you're talking about that disconnect is my role. And I genuinely think every safety leader's role, get in that boardroom, do your work. Don't go in half-assed. Don't expect everybody to care about what you care about. They're not safety people. You are. You took the job. They didn't take safety. It's your job to bring it to life. So get in there, do your homework, land message as well. And then the other part is, who talks about those conversations anywhere else? Everyone just goes, right, we're going to do a good thing. But I suppose the other thing we're not good is translating down, where we had these great epic conversations. We've been shocked at the buy-in, and we don't share that anywhere. Like, our board's amazing. We went in today and they were just like, no, we're not just going to skim the top and do like the real high risk stuff, create a 15-year program that never works. We're going to just go in. We're not good at sharing that. Yeah. It's but I think I drew a pyramid when you were talking, and there's something about vicinity. Like, there's more people that it takes to run an organization than to lead an organization. That's the basics. And the further you are from that boardroom or that narrative or listening or feeling it, the eye roll happens because you assume people don't care. And I think it's the same when you look at small organizations to big. It's still vicinity to that room. Some people were just like, well, what does it even sound like in those rooms? What does it look like? What does it feel like? And I think there's something about, if you've got a good safety leader, we're good at the going up, and realize it, we get the investment, but probably not so good at the down part and bringing the board alive.
But see how many safety leaders are good at that either? And this goes back to, and I suppose we were talking earlier offline about kind of the previous episodes we've done and different bits and pieces that we've spoken about and how this all ties in. But how many safety leaders are good at bringing safety to life?
Yeah.
Like, not many. How many are going to go into a board and not just rely on, well, this is a moral responsibility and the law says, and you're like, oh, fuck off, we have heard this before. Like, who are you inspiring?
Yeah.
Approximately fucking no one. Zero. There's your zero. Zero people are inspired by what you just said.
Yeah.
Like,
tell me one person that's inspired by compliance.
Like, I mean, you can be really nerd and be into it, and I respect that, but it's not fucking inspiring, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, to your point, to me, like, the other thing is, we as a profession, not getting into whether we are or are not a profession, separate episode, but as a profession, we have been feeding boards and senior management with absolute shite for years.
Yes.
So we've been doing, like, we this is a mess of our own making.
Yeah.
So first, like, a lot of people, the general consensus, like, outside of any of the cool safety people that we know, outside of that, it's like, oh, safety's a bit dry. And, you know, like, I was in a car yesterday on the way home from rugby match, fucking suffering, and but one of the girls was asking me, oh, what exactly safety? And by like 15 minutes in, she was like, that sounds fucking class. I was like, it is. You should be a safety person.
Yeah.
But like, most people don't speak about it that way. And like, boards, like you say, when they've all the plates spinning and they're so busy, legal obligation and moral responsibility is not going to cut it. It's not going to cut through the noise.
Yeah.
And I think there's that thing of, and I suppose I just have to, put a pin in Christian's comment so I can just keep coming back to it. But this thing of, like, the odds you will be there for maybe 5 years, but not 25. And it's like, what's in that person's interest? It's very easy with that dehumanizing bit to be like, sure, they probably don't give a fuck. Sure, they're only there for 5 years. But then I go, well, what if I was there for 5 years? Because if it was me, I'd want to be like the absolute smash hit CEO ever, and I want to be good at all of the things, and I want to have them all absolutely fucking singing. So then when I go out the door and they're like, that was unreal, why would I assume that any other CEO would not want the same thing?
100%. And it's, you know, the reason you have a board of directors is because they are supposed to be directing you towards what matters. Now, coming away from the fact that you very rarely see a safety director on a board, putting that aside, that would be, you know, if you're really investing in getting there, you would have, and if you had a really switched on board, you would probably have safety in the center, which is like, all our people are well and here and whatever, but put that aside. I'd lost my point. You were just saying about, so board of directors, directing, right, all the spinning plates. Bring me back, Lisa.
And if it was me, I would want it to be unbelievable. So why would I assume that any other CEO wouldn't want it to be?
Yeah, that's it.
Wouldn't be invested in if it was 5 years or 25 years.
Yeah, and I think that's the bit. So you nailed it with the how many safety people are actually going in there and being that inspiring, being that leader. Because essentially the board are awaiting really competent SMEs to come in and say, this thing matters. And then they go, which is right, because everybody thinks their thing is the special thing, right? Yep. Their question is, why? Why does it matter? What is special about it? And not that you would talk about people in that way, but when you say, I have been showing you a sea of green forever, but we're talking about audits and, you know, really generic, dry safety stats that aren't inspire anybody, like riddles. Well, what's underneath the riddles? They don't even know the questions to ask. I got a really good challenge not that long ago when I said to somebody, there weren't many questions off the back of a very good safety presentation, which was like all the things. And this person said, we're not safety SMEs. We don't know the questions.
Well, as in they didn't know the questions to ask?
Yeah, as in, so they said,
Wow.
well, if you've told me this is great, you're the director.
Oh.
I trust you. If you're saying to me, this, I've done A and B, it's got this result, and this is great. She's like, that's why you're here. If you're saying to me
Yeah.
that this is the fact, that's the fact. That's why you're here. And the outturn, I think the things that you look for when you are going in and you're having that 5-year window, and I want to be the smashiest. I haven't met a CEO yet that you say, do you realize how amazing it would be if you had the best record, the best business performance, the safety of people, like no fatalities, no major, you didn't change anybody's life. Do you know how big a deal it was when they built, what stadium was it? Was it there was a stadium that they built, and basically for the first time ever, somebody said, we're not going to kill anybody on this one. Everybody dies when we build a massive stadium. And I'm drawing a line to say no, which hurt my heart that somebody had to do that. And that was news. But, and then they did. They built it with absolutely no tolerance for anybody losing their life.
Was that the London 2012?
It was. Yes, it was the Olympic Stadium.
I think so. I heard some unbelievable things that happened with their safety programs there. Was
yes.
And also, I think there's somebody else in some other room going, but actually, so we have a tolerance for actually about 3 days. If we work out the stats and the hours, 3 people will probably die over the problem. But anyway, onwards.
Yeah, I mean, just to prepare yourself. And I think this is the difference, right? Is when you have somebody that will walk into a room in a brave way and say, we're not doing that anymore. Somebody's going to say, well, that's different. Correct. What does it take to not do that anymore? Why shouldn't we do that anymore? How big a deal is it? Are we the first? Are we followed? Like, there's all the questions, but these aren't unhuman questions. This is just saying you're changing the direction of this huge boat. And I really need to understand what's brought the change. Why everything that I've been told has been great for 50 years, 100 years, whatever. Why is that not good? And why are you saying it's different? And why should I trust you? And I think when you have somebody that really cares, it's not just like, oh, but I love people. It's not enough to turn a massive boat on that I like people and I love people. But it is, I really understand your business. And let me tell you that this is actually, I truly believe safety is a core business function, right? If you get safety wrong, not only is there the moral stuff, and put that to the side, that's where my heart is, you know how expensive that is for your organization. You know what rep damage that does. You know how expensive it is to fix everything all the time or be prosecuted all the time. You won't survive. It's imperative to have great safety. But then you can just go on.
There's this bit of me that's like, oh, you'll be prosecuted. You probably, like, you know what? Unless it's actually really fucking bad, you probably won't. You'll get away with it. Most companies get away with shit safety all the fucking time. More of them get away with it than don't. Like, if you think of the I don't know. Sorry, that's me just being cynical as fuck. But like,
is that the big company, little company thing again? Because I'll tell you what I think is, again, it's the seeing the reality of safety in practice. Small organization, you see it, and it's if it's everywhere, you really see it everywhere. And again, it's probably that bit about vicinity to the everyday work, which is why it's really important if you work in safety to get on the front line and see the bloody reality and not be finding any process without the frontline worker. But I mean, unsafe things happen every single day. Home, public, work, they just do. My house is not completely safe. Why would my workplace be? I saw that online the other day and I loved it. That's was it Debbie?
Debbie Brown, shout out.
Yeah, shout out to. I love it. And it's a great point. And I think get away with, I don't know how I feel about that phrase, get away with. Go on.
Like even I was reading this thing about a prosecution the other day, and so it was one here in Ireland, and this company was fined fucking something. You know, it was a Swiss port or one of those logistics aviation crowd or whatever. But anyway, this fella died and they got fined like 250 grand or something. And then it's thing, and taking into account their clean record. And I was like, what? And so it's this thing, and they make it read as if because they were safe up until now, whereas I already read it as they got away with it until now.
Interesting.
That it always, whenever it's, I always, and like clean record before now, like, okay, so they didn't, nothing, they were fucking looking, not this specific company, that I'm not referencing that actual incident. But as in generally, when you see that written, it's like, okay.
But in that, is there then an expectation? Is it's interesting. Is there not underneath that? Is there not then an expectation that there are organisations that are safe all the time? Because isn't everybody at some point doing something that isn't? I mean, this is literally how I've started writing my book, and I get myself in knots because my first chapter is what is safety, and it's just like around and around in a spiral. But everybody at some point, I mean, you're never ever going to remove all risk. Nothing is ever going to be locked down safe. Zero harm is not real because there are humans and weather. And while those two things exist, you're never going to remove it. So it's always going to be something that's happening that's not 100% safe because none of us ever are ever.
Yeah.
So I guess my brain is, I don't feel like people get away. Well, okay. I do feel like people get away with unsafe things all the time. I was married to a builder who used to tell me about the sites that they worked on, and it was terrifying. And his words were, or his boss's words were, who's checking?
Yeah.
I've got a contract in a mansion. Everyone is going to the toilet in buckets in the back of their vans. There is no stuff provided. There's no edge protection. They used to work on roofs, and their working at height assessment was find a tree and aim for that if you start to fall. But, so I completely agree with you. There are so many organizations.
But even like there are, like even we'll say one of the companies, one of the publicly listed companies I worked for before, I remember a contractor being in a boardroom and saying, like, there's three things. There's safety, quality, and program. Pick fucking two because you can't have all three. No, sorry. Safety. Well, it was safety, not safety, quality. Safety, budget, and program. That was it. He was like, you can't have all three. And those are, and he's like, and he's totally comfortable saying that. He's like, whatever will happen, will happen. We'll get it built anyway.
Is that about appetite though? I mean, and I feel like that I'd be in a room rowing. I would be in a room absolutely rowing because the budget is just.
But this is a contractor who's already been pre-qualified, worked across all these projects beforehand, you know, well known to the business. They know what they're getting when they sign up with this company. And you can have
two of the three.
You can never have all three.
That makes me feel a bit sick. But I think
again, sorry, that's construction. It's a very different beast. And that's still the reality today in construction. So
yeah, and I mean, even the examples I was just given there, it's all in that space.
Yeah.
And I think this is there's almost like a separate thing about small, tiny organizations, particularly in that construction sector, where you can start up a team of lads, you can go onto a building site, you can sub. It's so small and under the radar.
Yeah.
Who knows who's looking at who, what gangs are on site, all different. It's a complete minefield. And how are you supposed to even get underneath that?
This is now actually, after putting into my head about this other post that I saw on LinkedIn the other week, and it's by this woman. What is her name? Alex Thomas. So she is Australian, I'm pretty sure, and she is in the kind of farm agriculture safety space.
Yep.
And she had this post actually comparing safety from like the big organizations to kind of rural farmers, community-based businesses. And she was like, we're so flexible, we can make decisions quickly. We don't want to hurt each other because you're going to have to meet them down at the shop doing the weekly food shop. Like it's, you know, and she was going on about, I suppose, the flip side of all the strengths that these small businesses have when it comes to safety, because they're so flexible. They know each other really well. So there's that high level of care and that personal connection.
Yeah.
They're not dragged down by bureaucracy. They might have safe systems work. They might not be documented, but they're there. So yeah, that just came into my head now as well. So it's just
I think
another counterpoint.
I think it's so easy in it to go off on
Yeah.
but you're making me really think about that small organization piece. And if I think about I know a lovely lady that runs a small cleaning company. And she picked up the phone to me the other day having a right panic. There'd been an accident at work. Lady slipped on the stairs and had really hurt herself, right? Broke her coccyx or her hip, they don't quite know yet. And she's like, I was a cleaner, and then I started getting a cleaning contract and got other cleaners. I don't know, I suddenly have I think it was her husband spoke to somebody at work that said, oh, that's Riddle reportable. And because it's been a break and now she's off for extended amount of time, and then she just was having a meltdown. She was like, what's Riddle, what am I doing,
what does this mean?
And because you can be a builder and say, hey dude, do you want to come and do some contracts with me, come on, or I'm a cleaner, come, and you can get other cleaners to come and do your stuff. At no point is there a part when you go on Company House and say, I'm starting a business, that it says, da, da, da. When you have 5 people or more, you need to write down these things.
Yeah.
No, there's no point of intervention for a small organization to let them know this stuff even exists. So I did the mental rescue, which is like, you're all right.
You're grand. Take a breath.
You're grand, take a breath. Let me guide you through this. And then also let me put you on to somebody amazing that I know that is really local to this that will just help you. But it's just something about that small organization piece, and where safety is not the first thing. You're typically starting your own small business and you're just getting the job and you have to get the job, and it mushrooms, and then suddenly it's only really relevant if someone comes knocking at your door or something goes wrong, and then it's too late. But yeah, I suppose that's interesting. And also, while you are being agile and flexible and you're working with, all these people in your local community that that can do good work, you're not really then thinking about, there's still no one to tell you that things start to change in terms of legality when you hit the number of people. There isn't anybody. You're thinking about an income, paying the bills, like supporting your family. You're not thinking about this other stuff.
Yeah.
And so when somebody comes in and says, oh, you got to write all this stuff down and risk assess all this stuff and you need cost data sheets, that's the first eye roll right there. Oh
yeah.
If I was fine, nothing bad has happened, and what now suddenly I need all this stuff. So eye roll number 1, which is I was perfectly fine on my tot, and now you're making it difficult. But back to that leader piece, it's down to somebody to really bring alive how this stuff helps you. So you've got to bring it alive for good safety leaders, got to bring it alive for frontline as well as at the top of the house, really. I think you made a point earlier that's been just like rattling around my head, like how many good safety leaders do you know that can go in and change the minds of either frontline workers or even a board? And I think that's the thing, is I don't really meet many people. We know some.
But to be honest, like I meet some safety people and I'm like, I'm really into this. I'm like so into this, and you are boring the shit out of me.
Yeah. Because you're not talking about the heartbeat of this profession, which is like how amazing and interesting and.
Oh my God. This joke today.
Go on.
Like, do you ever meet someone who's so boring you feel like they're poisoning you? Just like that. Just feel like the life draining out of you. Oh.
Well, that's the compliance-led safety whole thing, right? And I'll be honest, I've taken up some seats in my time and been told on the way in, nothing is on fire. You don't need to do or change anything. And several seats in my career. And then you get in and you're like, what are we doing?
Like, sorry, what?
We're just measuring stuff.
Yeah.
But what are we?
We got some busy work. We're busy doing some busy work.
Checking the paper against the paper, and then when the paper doesn't match the paper, we just rewrite the paper to match the paper. Is that all right? cool. What are we doing? Who are we helping? I don't understand. And so that is the bit that drives me bonkers. And there aren't enough of those people that's just like, you can 100%. There are several times in my career that someone said, you could have an easy ride here. You could just chill. And I'm like,
but just chill. You could just change that last reviewed date on that Word doc and just keep on going.
Chill. I said to somebody the other day, I said, what's the difference between like human safety and compliance safety? And I was like, the easiest thing I can say to you is you have a policy that says accident happens, bad accident happens. And it says you must investigate. And so you open a folder and it says investigation, it's got the date on, and you're like, tick, policy tick, perfect, compliant. What does that tell you, that piece of paper? And they're like, well, what do you mean though? I'm like, how'd they get hurt? Any causes? What's underneath it? What did you change? Who's fixing anything? Do we know what led to the circumstances that led to that day? Are we looking at processes, management, time, fatigue, equipment? Are we looking at how that person was made to be successful and that didn't happen? Or even that we equip them to be able to succeed? Like, I love that. You do the learning teams thing, right? Dig into all the things.
Love it.
Oh my God. Causation, right? So compliance is piece of paper, right date, right victim, tick. That can be total garbage, and it can just say, Bob broke his leg in the yard. And then, but the paper is right, tick. So green everywhere. I would rather spike my eyes out with blunt spoons than live in a world where that is safety. I just can't do it. I want to live in a, what happened to Bob? What happened to the yard? What did he trip on? Why is it there? How often did we fix it? You know, should Bob have been there? Like all the things. And I just think you have to really care about the people to care about that latter type of safety. And then also to take that story and be good enough at the storytelling. We've got a podcast on storytelling as well, that we did last year. You got to be able to take those stories into a boardroom and say, and we just bring it alive for you. We just tell you about a really horrible injury that we had. And also that's why we're going to invest £250,000 in yards, by the way. Should we do that? Because this sort of injury is happening all the time. We've looked at it. Shall we get some investment? And that's off the bottom line. And they will say, yeah. It's mad.
And so going back to Christian's post, and the first paragraph is playing the long game is how we should all act, but the corporate world isn't set up to achieve it. So is it actually that those safety professionals who've made their way up there are not setting the world on fire? So maybe if it's set up to achieve it in all the other departments, why is it not achieving it in safety?
100%.
What's not set up?
Yes.
And so actually, maybe we need to stop looking at other people and stop looking at the managers and the CEOs and whatever, and we need to look at ourselves and be like, are we fucking good enough? Like,
yes.
Are we good enough? Are we bringing it to life for them?
Yeah. And I think you've probably put in a nutshell my response to Christian. I think I can't remember wholly what I said, but I genuinely think that's the mirror moment. Is if every other part of the business, everyone's saying, of course you will invest in all the other things. Well, they're just other investments. They're other things that come off the bottom line. If you are not getting the buy-in for that big investment, maybe it's your approach. Maybe it's the same.
Maybe they're just not that into you. Like, look, I don't know.
Maybe it's not you, it's me. Yeah. So I do think organizations are set up, especially big ones. There is an awful lot that goes into the structure of a very large organization. And if everything else is ticking along and they're talking about things like share price, that organization is going to be pretty slick, pretty well organized. If you're still not landing it and you're still not getting the investment, I think it's mirror time. But not to say this, so also just going to internally reach into, I have 100% been in organizations where I've said, this is the right thing to do, done all the influencing, brought it to life. And sometimes you will get people that don't care. There's like loads of research, I think, isn't there, around like CEOs typically have like psychopathic traits. They need to be quite sharp edged to be able to think about everything, be quite emotionless while setting up an organization. So I've 100% worked in organizations, typically the smaller ones, really, where it's much easier to get to crunch time. There isn't as big a budget to go around.
Yeah.
People don't care. I have worked in those organizations. They do exist, but I still want to say I've definitely moved steps forward even in those organizations, because I've just looked at me and gone, if I'm not landing this at all and I'm just hitting resistance everywhere, what am I missing? Because part of, and we've covered this in some of our other podcasts as well, is about understanding what your organization is trying to achieve and how you feed into their success. They're not designed to give a rubbish about what you're doing, the same as you're not designed to give a rubbish about what an accountant's doing. Your job is to try and speak in a language that complements everything else, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then get buy-in from there. So I do think they're set up. I just think you need to be the right person in the room to get the buy-in.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Thoughts? Because you were the other side of the fence. Go for it.
Jesus, we really went around the fucking houses on that, didn't we? I think I'm probably not wholly like flipped 180.
Yeah.
Again, because it's that disconnect piece. It's very easy to fall into the mindset of us and them in the ivory tower. Do they really give a shit? Could they possibly? And it's just too easy to dehumanize. So, saying all that, I'm still like, do they care? I don't know. So I think in certain organizations, and also I think that businesses who look for, like, would say, a company that goes and hires someone like, would say, like you, isn't going to be a company that doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Because also you're not going to work there. You'd be like, well, no, like, because there's that bit of it. You can do so much of, like, say, the influencing, blah, blah. Some people are just dickheads. They're just not going to ever care.
Yeah.
And it's recognizing that and doing whatever you need to do to move on. But like, so yeah, I suppose there are companies where it's like that. It's obvious if they're hiring professionals like yourself, they obviously do. But part of me is like, there's probably more that don't, or probably more that don't understand, actually. Again, going back to more that it hasn't been brought to life for, therefore.
Yeah. So I think maybe the thing is, so the takeaway really is, are they set up structurally? Yes, because you're there and that's why you're there.
Yeah.
But the bit that needs to be focused on is that connection piece. Do they care? And actually, for the majority of the boards that I've seen, they do. It's maybe just how we translate that.
How does that come back down the line?
For sure. So going up, throw someone like me in the mix and they're good at then pushing that up. And I would say the last 3 organizations that I've worked for genuinely had people talking to me about specific accidents. I can't believe we did this. I can't believe this happened. Oh my God. Because if the audience go to this measuring success one, changing the language, changing the type of narrative that you're using in those rooms really does have an effect. It's the downward piece. How do you translate the care back? That's the bit that's missing. So maybe set up structurally, yes, but really cascading a message of genuine care in a way that resonates and doesn't feel like corporate.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the strand that's missing to bring.
Oh my God, you know what definitely all big companies should do is hire copywriters to, like, set the fucking tone of your comms to be, like, really, well, I would say be really cool, but like be whatever you want to be. But you know, copywriters are so good at conveying messages. That's their job.
Yeah.
Copywriters, marketing, all that stuff, and get them in so that you're not reading something like, you shall do what. I was like, all right, okay.
Oh my God, don't do that. don't if you have anything that says you shall, burn it now.
You shall fuck right off. Like, yeah.
Amazing.
Right. That's a good place to land. Tell our listeners
so.
You should fuck right off.
Well, I think thank you very, very much to all those that joined us for this episode of Speak. This was the pod about a post. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.